It is a gray and dreary, actually kind of a neutral day. We decided to take a little bit of a road trip into Canada to visit one of our friends and a wonderful customer who is having her annual Christmas barn sale. I feel so privileged to be able to come a day early to do some shopping. When I walked into Kim's barn, I was absolutely enchanted. This is totally my vibe. All vintage Christmas, crusty, wonderful grain sacks and old world style. It's everything that makes my heart sing. I found a few special treasures for our own cottage and was totally inspired to do my cottage in a simple, old world, neutral style. So join me this week while I show you how I have redone some thrifted and stashed finds to decorate our cottage for Christmas. I will share Kim's Instagram link in the description box below. Let's get started on our crafting. Let's start with this thrift store find. It's a nice heavy metal wall pocket, and I am pulling all of the felt and stuff that was attached to the back of it. Then I'm going to give it a coat of bonding primer so my paint sticks to that metal. My plan is to add one of the IOD Christmas tapers to the front of it. After I made my casting out of air dry clay, I glued it in place with Titebond Quick and Thick, allowed it to dry, and then gave it a coat of paint. I'm using Debbie's DIY White Swan. I'll allow that to dry completely. Then I want to add a nice crackled finish with PENTART's two-step classic crackle finish. So apply the first component, let it dry completely, and then the second component is what's going to make those transparent crackles. After the crackle medium has completely dried, I'm going to apply a coat of Debbie's DIY clear wax and then some dark wax. Wipe away that excess then with a soft cloth to reveal all that beautiful cracking and crazing. These are two wood candlesticks that I have had around the shop for probably 4 years. So I'm giving them a coat of Debbie's DIY White Swan paint, and then I'm going to create some molds to just add a little special detail. After gluing all of the molds in place, let them dry completely overnight, and then I'll add a second coat of White Swan paint over the entire thing. I use an X-Acto knife to trim the mold pieces to size so that they'll fit around the base of the candle. The next day, I applied the finish, which was a first coat of Debbie's DIY clear wax and then Debbie's DIY dark wax. Using the clear wax first is going to make that dark wax slide around a little bit easier and give me just a little more control when I am removing the excess wax. For the next few projects, I'll be using the IOD paint inlay, GLORIA. I've searched around the shop to find some things that I've had stashed away, some things that haven't sold, and some unfinished projects, like this wood tote box. It had already been painted with a coat of black paint and a coat of white paint. I don't even remember what I used. So I've gathered up my inlay supplies, and now I'll go ahead and apply a coat of Debbie's DIY White Swan to the box. I'm applying an even coat, then spray the back side of the inlay and lay that into the wet paint. In order for the inlay to have really good contact with the painted surface, I'll use a brayer and also a damp paper cloth to press that all into place. Then I'll let it dry for several hours, give it a little mist with my Mister to loosen the paper, and then pull back that inlay. Wow, that is really cool. If I need to, I can touch up any areas where I may have a line that has occurred from the edge of the inlay sheet. I'm just using a paintbrush with a little more of that white swan paint to add a bit more texture. Next, I'm going to apply a stamp so that I can disguise that even more. To add another layer of dimension, I'm using IOD's Le Courrier stamp and IOD's Stone Gray ink to apply a stamp onto the background. I'm trying to avoid going over the inlay area, and I'm also looking for a more random effect with this stamp. So rather than pressing the entire surface of the stamp, I am letting my hand float lightly over the top of it so that even some of the stamp might not make complete contact. The inlay can be reactivated with water, and actually I try to use that to my advantage sometimes by blotting it with a damp cloth to move that pigment around and create a shadow effect. Once everything has dried completely, I'm sanding back the edges of this tote box to reveal the black paint that was underneath. And to finish off my box, I will apply a coat of Debbie's DIY clear wax and then dark wax and wipe away the excess. This is a galvanized flower bucket. I'm giving it a first coat with Debbie's DIY White Swan and allowing that to dry completely, usually overnight. I've cut out my inlay sheet, and now I'll get ready to apply the inlay sheet to that bucket. So I'm going to apply a second coat of the White Swan paint in a nice even coat. Mist the back of the inlay sheet with my Mister and apply that into the wet paint. For this project, I am going to embrace the outline of the cut edges that are left in the paint from the inlay. I think it's going to make almost like it looks like there was a page pasted on. After the inlay has dried completely, after several hours, I take my Mister, wet the inlay sheet to loosen it up, and then pull it back to reveal those pigments that are in the paint. I'll finish it off with a coat of clear wax and then dark wax. And yes, I am loving the effect of that line. For the next two projects, I'm also using the GLORIA inlay. I'm not going to bore you with the step-by-steps. These two pieces that are going to go in the antique frames are painted with crinoline. And to add some additional texture, I'm using the IOD stamp Vintage Textures and applying that into that chalk paint using IOD's Stone Gray ink. I am using a very random application of these stamps and just floating my hand over the surface. so that just little areas of the stamp will transfer. I'd like to add some gold details, so I'm using my favorite gold paint, which is PENTART Pigment Fix and the PENTART Metal Powder. For these projects, I'm using the antique gold, which has become one of my new favorites. Add some of the pigment powder into a small amount of pigment fix and mix it thoroughly. A little goes a long way. You just want to make sure that you are breaking up all of those dry metal pigments. And using some small detail brushes, I am just going to outline and fill in small details on both of my projects. For each of these framed pieces, I've also embraced that cut out line part that leaves the texture in the paint. I really like this effect. To me, it gives kind of a subtle nod to an antique document, as if that has been glued onto a background. When I apply the dark wax, of course, that is going to make that line edge from the inlay become even more evident. For one extra little detail on the wreath, I have cut out just a single word from the IOD Christmas Release Gold Tinsel Transfer. I think this gives it exactly the final little extra touch that it needed. To finish, more Debbie's DIY, clear wax and dark wax, focusing more around the outside edges.
Leave their worries all behind, take it slowly and unwind, and bring the peace back to a torn and shattered world. Let us share with all a Merry Christmas. Let us bring the greatest time of year. Let the words and the wishes take flight and come true.
This is a bread box that I picked up at a local vintage shop. I think I paid $12 for it. And it was already painted white. Because I wanted to use one of my Fusion Mineral Paint colors, I sanded the exterior of the bread box and applied a coat of Fusion Mineral Paint Victorian lace.
Let us come together, keep the winter outside.
To embellish the bread box, I'm using one of the L&J Goods special grain sack stencils. I have created a whole collection of these that are actual images from antique German grain sacks that I have collected over many years. I'll link to that special collection in the description box below. You'll find them at lnjgoods.com. I'm taping off the areas that I do not want to stencil and also taping the outside edges so that my stencil stays in place. This stencil is going to have kind of a raised effect with PENTART's Stone Effect paste in Anthracite. Using a palette knife, I'm spreading the stone paste gently over and through the stencil and then lift straight up, allow that paste to dry. We are always so delighted that you choose to spend your time with us here at L&J Goods. It is our wish that you are inspired to create beautiful things for your home using excellent products, next level techniques, and upcycling the things that you have found or that are already in your stash. While you're here, if you're enjoying the content you see from L&J Goods, we sure would love it if you do us a favor and click that subscribe button and the notification bell. You are not going to want to miss the next video in this series. I'll be sharing how I decorate our tree at home with some things that were found and many things that were made. And I'll be sharing those techniques with you. Back to the bread box, I'm using the IOD Mold Classic Elements, that little beaded trim, and I'm going to apply that to the top of the bread box. This time I'm using another favorite glue, which is the PENTART Express glue. Now I'm using a sanding block to distress away some of those paint layers and reveal a bit of that metal edge that's underneath the paint. For additional aged texture, I'll use the PENTART 2-component classic crackle system. Again, on this project, apply the first component in an even layer over the entire piece using a dry, soft brush, and then allow that to dry. After the component 1 has completely dried, it is time to apply component 2. This is a thinner layer, and this is what is going to create that crackle texture. Apply this also with a dry, soft brush. Allow component 2 to dry completely. To reveal all that beautiful cracking and crazing, I'm applying Debbie's DIY dark wax over the entire surface, really working it into that texture. And wipe away any excess with a soft cloth. The next project is another vintage metal bread box that has a broken latch, and I don't know, I think that I was going to add one of my stencils to this before and just gave up on the project. So here I am applying a coat of Debbie's DIY crinoline to the entire surface. You can see that I am applying the paint very randomly, allowing some of the original metal to show through and some of those rusty areas. I really want to give this the look of those antique pantry tins that I collect, and so that means I want lots of texture and layers of paint. I have used images from my collection of antique pantry tins to create a stencil collection. And if there has been a pantry tin that I can't get my hands on, I will snap a picture of it and create that stencil myself so that I can have the look of that pantry tin. Here's an example. This is a beautiful design from an old tin that I had made into a stencil. I'm going to use Debbie's DIY Golden Ticket to stencil it onto my bread tin. I'll be stenciling with DIY Golden Ticket. Each time that I dip my brush into the paint, I am offloading it so that I'm working with a pretty dry brush. There are a few areas where I had some bleed through, but again, I'm okay with that. I do want that rustic, more authentic look to this bread box. If I don't have enough paint, I can always go back and add another layer through my stencil. You'll find my custom pantry tin stencil collection linked in the description box below. Here I'm using a damp cloth to wet distress some of that paint back to the original finish.
walking through a midnight wonderland. The wise man keeping watch,
I'll also scuff up the surface with my sanding block.
and though it's cold outside, we're staying warm. And the star
I finish off the bread box with a coat of Debbie's DIY clear wax and a very light application of Debbie's dark wax, only in certain areas like the edges. Thank you again for joining us here at L&J Goods. We so appreciate each one of you. Be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know what is your favorite project. And join us next week as I share how I'm decorating my Christmas tree. Of course, we'll share our 2025 Christmas cottage tour to show you how I've used all of these pieces that I've made today. Everything I've used is in the description box below and available at our brick and mortar shop in Medina, New York, or at lnjgoods.com.